Good afternoon and good morning to Crystal and others joining us from the US. Um, so good afternoon, everyone, and American Chamber members, partners, and friends. I'm hoping that we also have on the line Jonah Mushai, who's joining us from the Zimbabwe Embassy in Washington, D.C. So my name is Duduzile Shinya. I'm the Executive Director for the American Chamber of Commerce in Zimbabwe, AmCham, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to today's webinar, which is titled Sustainable Agricultural Practices for Increased Productivity and Profitability. At AmCham, our mission is to promote and strengthen commercial ties between the US and Zimbabwe, supporting a business environment that encourages innovation, collaboration, and sustainable economic growth. Our work is anchored around the key pillars, which are advocacy, business linkages and networking, trade and investment promotion, knowledge sharing and capacity building, as well as membership value and engagement. So today's discussion sits squarely within our knowledge sharing pillar. Agriculture remains one of the most critical sectors in Zimbabwe's economic stability and growth. And the intersection of sustainability, profitability, and innovation is now more important than ever. As climate conditions evolve and global value chains shift, our sector must adapt through smart, resilient, and effective farming models. This webinar, which is the second in our agriculture series, builds on the momentum from our previous session and responds to member demand for deeper practical insights. We hope this series will eventually expand into a third session as we continue unpacking the trends shaping the agricultural landscape. We are honored to have two distinguished speakers joining us today. Both bring a wealth of experience and practical perspectives that can help inform on-the-ground decisions. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker today is Crystal Bird, former USAID Zimbabwe Economic Growth Officer. Crystal is an interdisciplinary development practitioner who joined the US Agency for International Development in 2009 as a Foreign Service Officer. Crystal has a Bachelor of Science in Economics with Marymount Manhattan College, a Master's in Public Administration from the University of North London, and a Master's in Finance Economics from University of London's School of Oriental and African Studies. Crystal has worked extensively across agricultural development, climate smart farming, and sustainable livelihood programs, bringing practical insights on how conservation agriculture can bring productivity and resilience. Crystal, we are delighted to have you with us. And over to you. We'll also just post Crystal's profile on our social media pages. But over to you, Crystal.
Thank you so much, Dudu. It's great to be here this morning with all of you. And thank you for the very warm intro. That was fantastic. Thank you. So as was said already, so I'm Crystal Bird Ogbadu is my name, and I'm an economist formerly working with USAID Zimbabwe. So I'm going to kind of talk about some of the past investments that USAID has made in Zimbabwe and about smart agriculture practices. And I have some slides I'll go through, and I'll just have that context at the backdrop. Okay, all right. So, like I said, I'll take us through a little bit of some of the past investments that USAID in Zimbabwe in agriculture. So, Ivy, we can go on to the next slide. So just thinking about investing in climate resilient crop practices, from our approach, we believe that engagement really has to start with listening. Before introducing any new climate resilient practice, we meet farmers where they are, understanding like their current challenges, the seasonal patterns, input constraints, and cultural preferences as well. So this really ensures adoption strategies are grounded in reality and not assumptions, because we believe that behavior change is driven by trust and through like demonstration plots, peer-to-peer learning, village level field days, and things like that, farmers can really see firsthand like higher yields, better soil moisture retention. Um, you know, these practical demonstrations make the benefits very tangible for the farmers that we worked with. And in past USAID programs, we emphasize low cost, high impact solutions. That was always kind of the goal. This includes like mulching, improved composting, intercropping, and things like that. And then in our practices and the investments and the projects that we oversaw in USAID Zimbabwe, we did continuous follow up with our farmers. That's really essential. So, like regular coaching, monitoring progress, and reinforcing successes really helps ensure practices aren't just being adopted, but really sustained. And our overall goal is always empowerment. Our engagement model really builds farmers' capacity to make their own climate smart decisions, ultimately strengthening resilience across entire communities. That's always our goal. We can go on to the next slide. And so, from our vantage point as well, from USAID's previous vantage point, we really believe that youth are really central to long-term agricultural transformation as well. So really engaging young people and ensuring a pipeline of innovators who really bring fresh ideas, technology adoption, and entrepreneurial drive into the sector is really key. In some of our past USA programs, we focused on entrepreneurship and not just farming. So this includes training youth to run seedling nurseries, agri-input shops, aggregation businesses, climate smart irrigation services, and digital advisory platforms as well. We also focused a lot on mentorship and also market linkages. That was key for us. Pairing young agripreneurs with experienced business mentors, cooperatives, and private sector buyers really help to increase survival rates for small startups in our experience. And we really attempted to create pathways to finance as well by working with microfinance institutions and village saving groups. We help youth access the capital they need to start or scale their agribusiness ventures. And what we saw from our programming is success breeds community-wide impact. And that's also another goal. So when youth become visible role models of like profitable modern agriculture, it really shifts community perceptions and inspires the next generation. Thinking about capacity building, kind of like this next bullet that I have here, capacity building for local agricultural workers. So we think about local extension workers also as the backbone of ag systems, strengthening their skills as well, really ensures climate resilient practices and technical innovations as well, reaching farmers consistently and accurately. In some of our USAID programs, we invested in programs that focused on technical upskilling as well. So this includes like refresher training on soil health, agroforestry, pest disease diagnostics, regenerative agriculture as well, and then also climate adaptation strategies. And also, again, reinforcing that the training is practical and hands-on. So these field-based demonstrations are really critical. Continuous coaching, as I talked about before, it really helps develop local long-term leadership we saw from our practice. And over time, trained workers become trusted advisors who anchor knowledge within the community after our external programs end, like that's the goal. And I think it would be interesting to see the cases like now that USAID has ended operations in economic growth in Zimbabwe as of September, it'll be interesting to see the things where our programs or projects go and what we've instilled in some of the communities that we started in. We can go on to the next slide, Ivy. So thinking about empowering farmers through innovative finance solutions. For us, access to affordable finance is a major barrier for smallholder farmers. From what we've seen, most rely on informal credit or high interest loans that really limit their ability to invest in improved seeds or irrigation or even new technologies. And we see microfinance as an entry point with tailored products that work for the farmers, like seasonal loans or group lending, asset financing, allowing farmers to borrow safely and repay after harvest. Flexible payment schedules are also important, and aligning repayment with crop cycle reduces financial stress and increases repayment rates from what we've seen. And then savings groups complement microfinance as well. So having village savings and loan associations help farmers develop financial literacy, build credit history, and also have access to emergency funds when those shocks and stressors come over time. And of course, microfinance is not just about loans, but it helps to support resilience by buffering against those shocks, like I said, and also enabling long-term investment. And to us, I mean, from our vantage point, microfinance strengthens entire rural communities. And thinking about the second bullet here, partnerships with financial institutions, that was also a critical component running through our programming because financial institutions play a critical role in scaling access. So banks, MFIs, credit unions, they all can expand their rural footprint through customized ag products. When we at USA used to partner with some of these institutions, the partnerships help to reduce the risk for lenders when paired with technical assistance providers, such as extension services, NGOs, or agribusiness. Banks gain more confidence that farmers' investments will be productive. And then to me, these blended finance models really help unlock additional capital. So then there's co-guarantees, maybe there's interest buy downs or risk sharing agreements that encourage lenders to serve traditionally high risk, quote unquote, farmers because they're seen to be high risk, especially those youth and women. So just kind of getting them more of that market access. Public-private collaboration strengthens impact as well. Government programs can subsidize insurance or support digital credit scoring systems that streamline lending. We didn't get too much into our programming, but that's just something that is important to help develop this sector. These partnerships obviously create long-term stability. Institutions build trust with the farmers, leading to broader financial inclusion was the goal, and sustained engagement. And obviously, access to funding for ag innovators is also a critical piece to success, we believe. Innovation requires investment, of course, whether adoption of climate resilient seeds, drip irrigation systems, solar dryers, ag forestry models. Farmers really need that upfront capital. So targeted financing accelerates adoption, integration grants, revolving funds, and things of that nature. So digital finance really helps expand that reach. Mobile money and digital credit, as we know, helps remove some of those geographic barriers that we see to provide faster, more secure access to funds, especially in these remote areas. The overall outcome and goal is scalable transformation. When farmers can finance and adopt innovations, the entire ag value chains becomes more productive, climate smart, and profitable. We didn't necessarily get this perfectly right, but that is always the goal that we're working towards. So we can go to the next slide. So just thinking about some of these opportunities for economic growth through farming, kind of building upon what we've done, we can go to the next slide. So kind of building on what I already talked about before, but kind of creating market access for those smallholder farmers, because that was the population we dealt heavily with. And market access is one of the largest barriers limiting income for smallholder farmers. Without stable buyers or fair pricing, the farmers struggle to scale production or invest in improved inputs. And also empowering communities really starts with empowering their bargaining power. So forming these cooperatives, like I talked about, or producer groups enables farmers to aggregate products, negotiate better prices, and reduce transportation costs. And that local empowerment also means shifting communities from price takers to value chain participants. So when communities understand market trends, quality standards, and buyer expectations, they engage from a position of strength rather than vulnerability, which is a lot of what we have seen in the past. So strengthening those community-led market systems builds long-term resilience. When farmers control the process from production to sale, they drive their own economic development. And thinking about facilitating access access to resources and knowledge. Market access requires more than the buyers themselves. It also relies on that knowledge. Farmers need reliable information on market prices, demands, trends, and post-harvest handling and quality requirements. So these are all like critical pieces. And then thinking about the last bullet here, building networks among farmers and consumers. The networks also help expand opportunities. So connecting farmers directly with aggregators, processors, retailers, and even consumers helps reduce that dependency on middlemen that we found over time. You know, they sometimes exploit the farmers. So we'll go on to the next slide. So just thinking about the past USAID investments, I'll just take us through a small snapshot of the portfolio that we had. We can go on to the next slide. So just a snapshot, it was about a $40 million a year investment per year that we had, and we focused on agriculture, of course, biodiversity, and also youth economic empowerment and engagement. And always the focus was sustainable value chains and private sector growth. We can go on to the next slide. So I just snapshotted some of it. This was not the entire portfolio, but USAID, the first project is the CIMMYT mechanization project. So we partnered with CIMMYT to introduce climate smart mechanization to smallholder farmers. So reducing labor burdens and improving productivity, especially for women and youth farmers who traditionally face unequal access to tools. The project really demonstrated that appropriate scale machinery like two-wheel tractors, planters, and threshers can significantly help to increase yields and also reduce post-harvest loss and lower production costs. The second project I'll touch on, we had the non-timber forest project, which was a public-private partnership with Organic Africa. And this initiative focused on sustainable harvesting, certification, and commercialization of high-value non-timber products, such as baobab, marula, and specialty teas. I was actually directly managing this, so I helped really help build out and improve the monitoring and evaluation system that tracked the farmers' incomes, biodiversity outcomes, and market expansion. And this project empowered forest-dependent communities, especially women, which is critical, to enter this niche organic market and benefit from the global demand for ethically produced goods. And just quickly, I'll touch on the last one, the Anchors project that was implemented by EcoDit. This supported ecosystem-based adaptation, biodiversity conservation, and climate resilience across Zimbabwe's most vulnerable landscapes as well. So just to be mindful of time, we can go on to the next slide. So just looking at this, developing strategies for agricultural value chain. So this graphic is just an overview of the strategies that I kind of touched on earlier and we work to employ in our USAID programs, obviously enhancing collaboratives and value chains, analyzing market trends for better decisions, increasing farm productivity through training, and fostering partnerships with sustainable growth. We can go on to the next slide. Ivy, I don't know if you can go on to the next slide. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so this slide again too is this graphic kind of depicts a culmination of some of the strategies we tried to employ in our USAID programs from the time that we have been investing in agriculture in Zimbabwe. So I won't take us through in detail, but it's some of the things that we already touched on before. So we can go on to the next slide, Ivy. I think we're getting close to the end. So this is just some strategic policy recommendations based on, the work that we've done and the investments that we've made in the economic growth sector. So from what we believe, thinking about finance, expanding public-private partnerships. So like I talked about, one of the projects that we had, the non-timber forest products project, is a public-private partnership with a private firm, helping those smallholder women farmers get access to these global markets was really important. So really mobilizing finance, leveraging PPPs to kind of crowd in private investment alongside public funding is an idea. Opportunities include like blended finance for irrigation, mechanization, as I touched on, input supply, and also smallholder market linkages. Again, these are some of the things that we've done in our programming. Incentivizing private sector engagement through risk guarantees, co-investment facilities, or tax incentives that helps expand farmers' access, as I touched on. And obviously strengthening sustainability by reducing reliance solely on donor funding is critical. So this is a really important piece. And then thinking about technology, obviously, we touched on technology as a theme running throughout, but obviously scaling digital agricultural solutions. So mobile advisory platforms, extension services, weather alerts, market information, all these things should be at the touch of a farmer's hand. Policy should really encourage adoption of digital record keeping as well, mobile payments, remote sensing for crop monitoring, et cetera. Again, some of these things we were working towards, not 100% there, but these are like the gold standard of things. And we talked about training and how essential that is. And then digital tools to really be designed to be inclusive, especially for women, youth, and low literacy farmers. That's really crucial. And the last thing I'll say is just in the Zimbabwe context, and really in any country, I guess, that you're working in, policy recommendations must directly support the country's agricultural transformation strategy, ensuring coherence with national priorities on food security, climate resilience, and rural economic growth is key, we believe. And you can go on to the next slide. I think that was it. So yeah, we just to say that USA's long-term engagement through mechanization, market system strengthening, organic value chain development, and climate smart agriculture has laid the groundwork for a more productive and resilient ag sector. These investments created the enabling environment we believe Zimbabwe needs to modernize agriculture, help to improve farmer skills, better technology, stronger institutions, and overall more inclusive markets. Again, these were the things we were working towards, and we've made substantial investments and impact in these areas. And this is something that one should think to build upon as they go forward. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much for helping me share the presentation, Ivy. I'll stop there and we can move on to Daryl.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I think that was a very insightful presentation. And it's good to see that there was quite a lot of work done just around empowering the farmers, access to finance, because I think access to finance has been a perennial issue for farmers. So anyway, I'll allow questions at the end after we've gone through Daryl's presentation. So maybe if I can introduce Daryl. So our next speaker is Daryl Evans. He's the managing director at Foundations for Farming. Daryl was born in Gweru. He grew up in the Mwenezi area, which is southeast of Zimbabwe. Attended Falcon College and then University in KwaZulu-Natal. He has an honors degree in agriculture and majored in animal science. In terms of, I think at some point he was also farming, he worked in Indonesia and he was also farming in South Africa in the ostrich industry. So we've put his full profile as well on our social media pages so that you can then also appreciate, all the work that he is doing. Daryl is also a strong advocate of the Fumbudza Intwasa model, and we'll speak to why this approach has proven effective in improving yields, soil health, and farming outcomes. So Daryl, over to you and welcome.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be here. And today I'm going to, as Dudu said, we will be talking about Fumbudza and why Fumbudza works. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Okay, I'm sure most of you have heard about Fumbudza. Fumbudza is pretty much a household name in Zimbabwe these days. Foundations for Farming were the ones who developed it, and I was fortunate to be part of that team. And it is something that has been an incredible gift to Zimbabwe, and not only Zimbabwe, but it is now spreading through Africa as well. And it obviously comes from a Shona name. The name is about the time of the year when the leaves are turning green and first developing. And it is about being ready for the rains. The trees are ready, and what we want is the farmers to be prepared and ready as well. A lot of people think that Fumfudza is too primitive and is going backwards, but I think after this presentation you'll understand the power that Fumfudza has. The birth of this concept was from getting a 20-liter bucket and saying that this is how much food a family would need for a week. If they had a 20-liter bucket, they would have excess, and that is what we designed the plot around. So each plot is only 1/16 of a hectare, which is what most people can't believe. How can something so small produce enough food for a whole family for a week? And that's what makes it so powerful. The design is so that there are 39 meters in the length, which have 52 rows. And the reason for that is 52 weeks. I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. And it was, as I said, designed around a 20-liter bucket. So each row will have 28 planting stations, and each planting station will have 2 maize plants. And each of those plants are expected to get 1 cob, which means you have 56 cobs. When you sell 56 cobs, which are on average 300 grams, that's what we are hoping for, you will get a 20-liter bucket of grain, enough to feed a family for a whole week. And obviously, that then is extrapolated into 52 rows, 1 row for each week of the year, resulting in 52 buckets for the year. And this is something that many of you may have heard before, but haven't really understood that this is a blueprint from God and exactly how it works. So we're going to go into a little bit of the actual technology behind this today. Obviously, conservation agriculture principles apply: minimum soil disturbance, maximum soil cover, crop rotation, high management. We also are interested in looking at those a little bit deeper. So very briefly, and I'm just going to zip through these, is if we do not disturb the soil, we ensure that we get much deeper water and air penetration. If you have soil that has been disturbed, it does not allow water and air to penetrate deeply, and it basically just runs off the top. Air doesn't get in, the roots do not breathe properly, and the water is lost into the streams, siltation of rivers, flooding, etc., etc. And obviously, there's also the issue of weeds. Weeds are one of our biggest challenges, and I'll talk more about that as well. But how many people know that that seeds can stay dormant in the soil for up to 40 years, 40 years? They will be dormant in the soil. What are they waiting for? They're waiting to be disturbed. So as soon as you disturb soil, in that way, those seeds are exposed to the sunlight and your weeds grow. So less soil disturbance, you actually get less weed growth. We ensure that all of our fields are covered with a blanket. We call it God's blanket. This mulch is the gold. If you're not farming with mulch, you really are wasting your time, because that is what makes this so successful. It is the key to all of this. And it is the most difficult thing for farmers to adopt and to find and to do. But because of the size of Fumfudza, that is able to be done. So again, the benefit of mulch, the main one is to ensure that you get water infiltration. When you have an unmulched soil, especially if it has been disturbed, all that water is literally lost. It runs away into the water system, and it does not enter your water table and is not available for your plant. So from a farmer's perspective, it's all wasted and lost. Obviously, there are other benefits to your mulch. It moderates soil temperature, it suppresses weed growth, it provides nutrients. There's a lot of other benefits as well. So going back to the precision of this methodology, our spacing is important to get exactly the right plant population. The hole depth, we only dig a hole 8 centimeters deep. That is hardly anything. If your soil is even if it's hard, one good hit with a hoe is pretty much enough to dig the hole that you need. So it's not a laborious thing that most people think it is. It's actually pretty easy to do. The precision of applying the fertilizer and the lime, the seed, all exactly in the right place is also what makes this so amazing. And I will try and get you to understand that a little bit better. I've got a few pictures coming up which will help you to understand that. So in each planting station, we are applying the basal fertilizer and the lime below where the seed is going to be placed. We ensure that we plant 3 seeds in each hole. They must not be touching each other, so that because we are going to remove one of them, our plant population that we want is 2 plants per planting station. If 3 grow, we're going to be overpopulated, and you can actually result in a 30% loss in yield because of competition between them. So you need to remove them. We plant 3 because we are wanting to get 100% plant population. Unless you plant more than 100, you can never achieve that. To help you understand the precision, you can see this rectangle on the screen here. It's 60 by 75 centimeters. The hole, the basin that we are digging is 15 by 15, which means if I draw a matrix on that of 15 centimeter squares, you will see the hole makes up only 5% of the land. In that 95%, we are not putting any fertilizer, we're not putting any seed on that piece of land. Everything that we are placing in the land, all our inputs are going precisely in that planting station, which is 5% of the land. So this, and that is the only place where we actually disturb the soil as well. The rest of the 95% obviously is mulched and covered and protected. Weeds are a challenge, and there's a very simple remedy to weeds. We need to ask ourselves a few questions when it comes to weeds. Where do the weeds come from, especially the seed? The seed is from weeds we have allowed to grow on the field. And so who plants those weeds? Who plants the seeds of the weeds into the field? It's the farmer. The farmer is the one who comes with a plow or with his whatever methodology he uses, and he buries those seeds and plants them, literally plants them. And then when they grow, he gets annoyed and is exacerbated and now has all this work to do because he now has to try and get rid of these things that are challenging his seed. But he's not thinking about the fact that he actually planted those seeds along with the maize, and they're going to grow in competition. So a very simple solution. If you don't want them to grow, stop planting them. If they do grow, remove them when they're small, before they make more seed. Never allow them to make seed again in your field, so that they are not there for you to plant. So obviously mulching, row spacing, all of these things aid in the control of weed. And mulch is the most important aspect. Again, I can't tell you enough times how important that is. There are obviously some myths around Fumfuza. One of the most big one is it's too labor intensive. That is not true with Fumfuza, because Fumfuza is a concept, a specific model. We're not talking about conservation agriculture. Fumfuza uses conservation agriculture methodology. But if you're wanting to do conservation agriculture on 2 hectares, it is laborious. It is huge. When you're doing something that is on a piece of land that is 39 meters by 16 meters and it can feed your family for a year, it is no longer laborious. It is very, very small piece of land and can be done in a very small space of time. You can find the mulch to cover that area. And I will tell you a little bit more about mulching opportunities a bit later. We can even water this plot in a dry spell. And I want to just show you that. So if you were to apply 1 liter per planting station at the beginning of a dry spell, or 2 weeks into a dry spell when we know that our plants are already becoming stressed, that 1 liter is actually enough to sustain that plant for another 3 weeks. equivalent to about 40 mils of rain because of the precision of where we are putting it. You can see it's not irrigating all the other 95% of the land. We are precise on the placement of even the water, and that makes a huge difference. So if a farmer were to carry 200 liters of water, so 20 liters by 10 per day, it would take him 7 days to water the entire plot and ensure that he could bridge a 6-week gap of dry spell and ensure that his crop would be fully successful. Mfudzo 4 is the next phase, and this is what we've been training into the governments of Zimbabwe for the last 2 years. We've trained 3,500 of the Agri-Tech officers at our station in Glen Forest over the last 2 years. And Mfudzo 4 is what we've been training them. Mfudzo 4 is the next phase where there's not just a maize plot. It's now you have a cereal plot. It's maize or sorghum, depending on obviously where you live. Then you have a protein plot, which is sugar beans or cowpeas or groundnuts. The third plot would be sunflower, which is to provide cooking oil. And the fourth one is sun hemp, which is a cover crop. Now, each of these plots, the maize, as we already know, will produce a bucket of maize per row. If you grow a plot of sugar beans, exactly the same size plot, exactly the same length of row, that row will produce 7 big cups of beans. There are 7 days in a week, which means that each day of the week, you get a cup of beans. For every 52 weeks of the year, it means every single day, 365 days, you get a cup of beans in your house for your family. The sunflower plot, exactly the same size plot, the same length of row. One row will give you 3 to 4 kgs of seed. When you press that into oil, it will give you 1 liter of cooking oil. 1 liter of cooking oil for the week, and there will be 52 liters for the year, enough for the family. The sun hemp is the difficult one, which people are still trying to grasp and not really adopting very well. But that is the one that now feeds the soil, and that is very, very key. I'm not going to go into the details of that now. In Zimbabwe, most farmers have up to 2 hectares that they're trying to farm. Now, if you put 4 Mfudzo plots into 2 hectares, it will look like this image. We're only planting 1/4 of a hectare, and that is enough for all the food security that we require for our family for the entire year. Cereal, protein, and cooking oil, and we're feeding the soil. So now there's a very, very big elephant in the room. Look at the extra space. There is almost 2 hectares of land that is unutilized, and yet we're sustaining our family. And for the first time in a farmer's life, they can actually begin to dream of doing a commercial venture on the balance of that land. But first, they need to learn how to do Mfudzo, and then to do Mfudzo 4 to be food sufficient, food secure, and then they will be able to advance to a point where they have space to be able to do a commercial venture going forward. Thank you very much. That is all I have to share today.
Thank you so much, Daryl. I was just sitting here and I was thinking, you know, what I've been told or what I've heard of Mfudzo is not half as detailed as what you went through. You know, so thank you for that oversight. And it really, you know, demonstrates how practical it is. And I'm sure a lot more people will be wanting to adopt it. So thank you very much to both our speakers. If we can just allow, we have Kudzai, Mudanan, sorry, let me start again. I've got Kudzai, Mudanyan from CBZ, one of our members. So we want to just do a member spotlight. He is the marketing manager for Agro Yield within CBZ. Kudzai, can we give you 2 minutes to present?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was just trying to unmute there. Thank you for having me, and greetings to you delegates. I think the introduction has been done. So on behalf of CBZ, we are a subsidiary of the broader CBZ Holdings, which is a financial services provider. So CBZ AgroYield in itself is a diversified agricultural services provider, serving through 4 divisions, namely the farming division, then we have the commodity trading division, the supply chain division, and the value addition division. So essentially, we are an ecosystem throughout the whole value. 17,000 farmers in our book. So that's just testament to the impact. Above all of that, just to give you a glimpse of how this model operates, we contract you as a farmer through our farming division. Once your yield is ready, our supply chain division kicks in, offering you logistical services, be it combine harvesters, be it transportation. Then from there, we have the commodity trading division ready to look for markets for your yields. And recently, we signed an agreement with the Afreximbank. So that means locally, that is for Zimbabwean farmers, we are now connecting them to the international markets through the Africa Trade and Distribution Company, which is a subsidiary of the Afreximbank. And then we have the value addition division for those farmers who want to beneficiate, which is beneficiation of their output. All of that is done in-house by this subsidiary CBZ AgroYield. So we are happy to expand and talk more on the sidelines. If you are free, you can also visit our website at CBZ Holdings for more information, as well as at our handles at CBZ Holdings on X, at Facebook, at Instagram. Thank you so much, Ivy.
Thank you, Kukai. So if we can now, we've got a few minutes left. We're still within our time for the webinar. So if we can take questions, so you can type the questions in the chat, or you can put up your hand. If I don't see your hand and there's silence, you can go ahead with your question or comment. I'm sure Crystal and Daryl are ready to respond. So please come through with your questions. Perhaps while I'm waiting for a first question to come through, Crystal, if I may just ask to say, how many of the smallholder farmers are struggling with consistent adoption of conservation agricultural principles? Because it sounds like, they are being empowered. These are things that they are being taught and they know they have to implement, but it doesn't sound like it's something which is easy. And I know, people generally, when change is proposed, maybe a bit resistant or afraid to change. Just to hear your viewpoint.
Thank you for that question. I think that's a great one. And I would say a great deal of the farmers did struggle with some of these practices. And a lot of times it's like the constant follow-up and training and hands-on was necessary, but people still struggled and they kind of want to revert back to the old no matter what. And I think that's why when people say aid, we need to get off of aid and all of that, it's like, but sometimes this follow-up and that support is needed over time, because we did see consistently you go back and they kind of revert back to, and then for a short period of time they are doing what they're learning and all the hands-on, but then they revert back to it. So it is a constant struggle over time. So I'll just stop there. But thank you for that question.
No, thank you. Jonah's got a question. Jonah, please come through.
Thank you, Dudu. Yes, my name is Jonah. I'm based here in Washington, D.C. at the Embassy of Zimbabwe. Firstly, I want to thank Crystal and Daryl for very informative and detailed presentation. I've learned a lot And obviously, we thank also AmCham for organizing this webinar, and we look forward to many more of these. So I have maybe two questions, one for each. My first question is, Crystal, maybe is to I acknowledge and understand, the good work that USAID has been doing in Zimbabwe, trying to empower the farmers on sustainable agriculture. Maybe my question would be, how sustainable are those efforts now that USAID it has pulled over? Maybe my question is, as you through those interventions, were you have you designed mechanisms to allow maybe other institutions to take over or to pass on that framework so that it can be self-sustaining at some point, or there is some continuity like what we have seen when USAID pulled out? So the question is, what framework or what needs to be done to allow those benefits that we've already accrued to the country not to be lost? Maybe that would be my question, my first question. And then to Dow, it was a very informative presentation. But what it looks like is like this Fumvudza could be a kind of intervention that is designed for a smallholder intervention to guarantee food security at a household level. But given the success stories that this practice is given, is it possible that it can be adopted as a model of farming that could be applied on a commercial basis, so to speak? Thank you.
I think I can jump
Those are
in.
my two questions. Yeah.
Oh, Jonah, thank you so much for the question. And also thank you for having me here today. This is indeed a pleasure. So I'll just try to answer from my perspective, but I will say that in the projects and programs that we designed, and when we're working with these community groups and smallholder farmers and also women and youth, we do always kind of look for those champions. And those are the people that maybe it's the community leader or one of the elders or something like that, that kind of tries to champion that work. So just as the previous question that was asked about kind of losing like the things that we're teaching, and then sometimes the farmers kind of revert back to the way they were doing things. If there's a champion like in that community, we would look to that individual to kind of say, hey guys, we learned it this way. Let's refresh those skills and make sure we're doing it like this, the way we learned. So we would hope that knowledge was deep enough and instilled that it would continue. In a perfect world, I would have hoped we would have been able to create those linkages. So like to have like a very clean way to have been able to hand off some of these things to other partners. But unfortunately, we weren't able to do that with the time that we were given. So that would have been the best way to carry forward some of these things. Or if we were in deep connection working with the government of Zimbabwe, we could have maybe worked with them and had the time to work with them to kind of like hand over some of these things if they were ready. So that's always a goal, but we hadn't achieved that yet. But one thing I will say is the one project that I touched on, and that's why I think public-private partnerships are so important. We had that non-timber forest products project, which is a partnership with Organic Africa, who's a private business. Now that model that we had is a good one because it is sustainable, because Organic Africa is a business. And so they have an interest in making sure they continue to support these communities and these smallholder farmers. So that's the kind of model, like we were providing support on the side, but then at the same time, working hand in hand with the communities and the private business so that this can continue forward. So I just give that as an example of like kind of like hope that something like that can continue, like even though it was like we had an abrupt end, that can continue, and those relationships and all that building we did with the community would continue in this case. So I'll leave it there. So we would just hope that, a lot of this knowledge and the investments that we made wouldn't be lost. So we'll see where we go with it, but I'll stop there and I'll let Daryl answer his question. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Crystal. So Jonah, yes, the question, the answer is absolutely. We actually started 40 years ago. Our founder was managing a 3,500 hectare maize, wheat, and soya farm here in Zimbabwe. That's where this technology was developed on a large scale. It was then downscaled to suit small scale farmers. To take it back to where it should be is very, very easy and simple to do. The challenge is the middle of the line type of farmer, the guy who's got 10 or 20 hectares. There is obviously machinery that can do what we needed to be done, but that size of farmer can't afford that equipment. So that is the challenge. And there's no reliable equipment that really works on the ground for small scale farmers. There's no planter, none of these things really work doing the right principles. We all talk about mulch, we talk about doing things with conservation agriculture, but there has not yet been anything that has been invented that can do what needs to be done at a small scale level and even at a medium scale level. It's all large scale equipment, which costs tens of thousands of dollars. So there are modules, there are ways that we can upscale from Fudza. The easiest way to do that is obviously with labor. Africa has a lot of unemployed, hungry people, and that is an easy way. We have a model that can actually do that, where you feed a family by allowing them to manage a Fudza plot or two Fudza plots, one which goes back to the investor and one which feeds that family. So by doing that, you feed a family, you train a family, and actually you can double your income, your investment, by doing that, because your plot covers what you paid for them plus your inputs as well. So we have a model like that, which works very well. There's something, though, that I need you to understand. This, as soon as you try to upscale things, you lose the precision, you lose the ability to do things. I've got a couple of maize cobs here. This one I'm holding against my face so that you can see the proportion, because if I hold it too close, it looks big. Okay, this is a 300-gram cob. If we get 56 of these, as I said, we will get a bucket of maize from one row. Okay, now if you take this cob and you get a calculator out and you multiply this cob 0.3 kilograms multiplied by 56, which is how many cobs you get in a row, you'll get about 16.8 kilograms, which fills a 20-liter bucket. Multiply that again by 52 rows, you'll get about 830-something kilograms. Multiply that by 16 plots, because there's 16 of these plots in a hectare, you will come to about 14 tons a hectare. That means a small-scale farmer is producing the equivalent of 14 tons a hectare if he achieves this. What is Zimbabwe's average maize yield at the moment? If we're honest, for the last 10 years, it's been less than 1 ton per hectare. Okay? If I take this cob, you see these two cobs together? Now this cob weighs 1/10 of the 300 gram. This is a 30-gram cob. There's still 100 seeds on this cob, but it is only 30 grams. You do the same calculation, you're going to get 1.3 tons a hectare if you get 56 of these cobs in a row. You understand what I'm saying? This cob, which is a small, tiny little cob, actually equates to double Zimbabwe's national average. That is why Fudza works, because it's about precision, it's about plant stand, it's about population, it's about high use of land. And it works because you don't need a lot of money. It costs $50 to produce enough food for a family for a year with all the best inputs you can buy. And if you can just do it right, you will have incredible success. It's not about doing large amounts. If a farmer has the passion to grow a large amount, then let him do that. But most people just want to feed themselves. And once they feed themselves, then, as my presentation showed, they can actually dream about something they would like to do commercially. And most people won't choose to grow maize commercially as their dream job. So why make people grow large hectares of maize? Just grow enough to what you want and then plant plant a nut forest or avocados or horticulture or grow goats or cattle or dairy or something that you're passionate about. Don't grow maize. Just grow enough to be food secure and then meet your passion in a commercial venture. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Crystal and Daryl. Thank you for going into that detail. Daryl, I was actually going to ask you, and you've answered my question, that, I've heard that a lot of farmers, sometimes, the inputs that they're given, so for example, the fertilizer, they will try and save, a bit of the fertilizer just in case. And then, we don't get the yields. And, I was just wondering to myself to say, how do we improve it? But, if your training is covering that, and you're able to demonstrate with your, the 2 cobs of maize, I mean, I'm convinced that, I need to use the requisite fertilizer and hopefully, get the right yields. So it's quite exciting, just hearing what the program is actually supposed to deliver. And we just hope we get closer to delivery. So we're going to wrap up now because we're running out of time. If you do still have questions, please can you send those questions to either myself or Ivy, and then we'll make sure that we get those to Crystal and Daryl, and hopefully, Crystal and Daryl, you'll have time to respond to those questions. But if we don't get questions by end of day today, we'll take it that you've been heard and your insights were clear, and hopefully we'll see more productivity taking place. So thank you so much. And I think we've talked about, how critical it is to be using sustainable methods, especially with, the changing climates that, we are anticipating, low water. It's really important for us to, have smart irrigation tools. And I like the example on mulching, because I mean, that's a simple practice, but it can, really assist in terms of holding the moisture in the soils, in the soils. So thank you very much for your highlights. Thank you very much for your contributions. And at AmCham, we thank you all for joining and continuing to follow our websites. We will continue to have webinars in 2026 around agriculture, and we'll also develop into other sectors going into the future. And I'd like to just thank the members that did join on our call. Your engagement always helps us to build, programs that are more responsive and impactful for you. So we look forward to meeting everybody in the new year. We hope you all have restful festive season holidays. And we encourage you to stay connected with us and participate in the upcoming AmCham activities, which we will be updating on the website. So please continue networking, sharing knowledge, and just contributing to the growth of not only the US and Zimbabwe, but Africa and the global sphere as well. So thank you once again, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.